Let's read my followers' stories.
One warm Saturday afternoon, John was sitting in his room, immersed in the latest video game that had just come out. The sun was shining brightly outside, casting a golden hue over the neighborhood. But John was too focused on the game to notice. The sound of virtual battles filled the room as he skillfully maneuvered his character through a series of challenges. Just as he was about to reach a new level, his phone buzzed on the desk. John glanced over, slightly annoyed at the interruption. It was a message from Uncle Justin. The message read, "Hey, Johnny boy. How about you come over? Got something fun planned for us today." John hesitated. He loved his Uncle Justin, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to leave his game. Uncle Justin was known for his projects, anything from fixing up an old car to crafting something out of wood. While John usually enjoyed these activities, today he was more interested in staying in his virtual world. Still, something in the back of his mind nudged him to go. After all, Uncle Justin had always been there for him. With a sigh, John saved his game, grabbed his shoes, and made his way to Uncle Justin's house. As he walked, he thought about how much time he had spent with his uncle over the years. Uncle Justin was in his early 60s, with silver streaks in his once dark hair, and a friendly, warm smile that seemed to put everyone at ease. He was the kind of person who had a story for every situation and a lesson in every story. When John arrived, he found Uncle Justin in the backyard, working on something at his old, weathered workbench. The smell of sawdust filled the air, and the sound of birds chirping created a peaceful atmosphere. Uncle Justin looked up from his work, his face lighting up when he saw John. "Johnny boy. Glad you could make it," Uncle Justin said, wiping his hands on his apron. "I've got a special project for us today." John smiled, though he couldn't help but wonder what his uncle had planned this time. "What are we doing, Uncle Justin?" Uncle Justin motioned for John to come closer. On the workbench were several pieces of wood, nails, a hammer, and some paint. "We are going to build a birdhouse," he said with a grin. "It's been years since I made one of these, and I thought it would be fun to do it together." John couldn't hide his surprise. A birdhouse. He hadn't built one of those since he was a kid. The idea seemed a bit old-fashioned, especially compared to the high-tech world of his video games. But he didn't want to disappoint his uncle, so he nodded and picked up a piece of wood. "Sure, Uncle Justin. Let's do it." Uncle Justin's eyes twinkled as he handed John a measuring tape. "First things first, we need to measure and cut the wood to the right size. This part's important, Johnny. If we don't get the measurements right, the whole thing could end up crooked." As they worked, Uncle Justin began to tell stories, as he often did. John had heard most of them before, but there was something comforting about listening to his uncle's voice, the way he spoke with such enthusiasm and care. "You know, John," Uncle Justin began, "when I was your age, I used to spend hours in my father's workshop, just like this. He was a carpenter, the best in town, and he taught me everything I know about working with wood. Back then, we didn't have all these fancy gadgets and machines. It was just me, my dad, and a set of tools." John glanced up from the piece of wood he was sanding. He had heard bits and pieces of these stories before but had never really paid much attention. Today, though, something about the way Uncle Justin spoke made him listen more closely. "I remember one summer," Uncle Justin continued, "I was about 15, and I decided I wanted to build something special for my mom's birthday. I figured I'd make her a beautiful wooden jewelry box. My dad warned me it was a tough project, especially for someone my age, but I was determined." John could picture a young Uncle Justin, full of ambition and determination. He wondered if he had the same kind of drive his uncle had back then. "It took me weeks of planning and building," Uncle Justin said, his voice full of nostalgia. "There were times when I wanted to give up, when the wood wouldn't cut right, or the joints wouldn't fit together. But my dad kept encouraging me, telling me that anything worth doing is worth doing right." John smiled at that. It sounded just like something Uncle Justin would say. He watched as his uncle skillfully cut a piece of wood, the saw moving steadily through the grain. In the end, Uncle Justin went on, "I finished the jewelry box just in time. It wasn't perfect, there were some rough edges, and the lid didn't close quite right, but my mom loved it. She said it was the most beautiful gift she'd ever received, not because of how it looked, but because of the effort and love I put into it." John felt a warm feeling in his chest. It was clear that this story meant a lot to Uncle Justin, and he could see why. It wasn't just about building a jewelry box, it was about learning the value of hard work, patience, and love. As they continued working on the birdhouse, Uncle Justin asked John about his life, about school, and about the things that interested him. John found himself opening up more than usual, sharing stories about his friends, his favorite classes, and even his frustrations. Uncle Justin listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. "You know, John," Uncle Justin said after a while, "one of the most important things my father taught me was to respect the wisdom of those who came before you. He used to say that every piece of wood has its own story, just like every person. And if you take the time to listen, you can learn something valuable from each one." John thought about that for a moment. He had always seen his elders as people who were set in their ways, with outdated ideas and old-fashioned ways of thinking. But as he listened to Uncle Justin, he realized that there was a lot more to it than that. His uncle wasn't just sharing stories. He was passing down lessons that had been learned over a lifetime. By the time they finished the birdhouse, the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the yard. The birdhouse wasn't perfect. There were a few crooked nails, and the paint was a bit uneven, but it was sturdy, and John felt a deep sense of satisfaction looking at it. "Not bad for a couple of amateurs," Uncle Justin said, stepping back to admire their work. John laughed. "Yeah, not bad at all." Uncle Justin turned to John, a serious expression on his face. "You know, Johnny, life isn't all about the things you can see and touch. It's about the things you learn, the people you connect with, and the experiences you have along the way. And a big part of that is learning to respect the wisdom of those who came before you." John nodded, understanding more than he ever had before. "I get it, Uncle Justin. I really do." They spent the next hour cleaning up, chatting about all sorts of things. Uncle Justin shared more stories about his father, about the challenges he faced as a young man, and about the lessons he learned the hard way. John found himself hanging on every word, realizing that these weren't just stories. They were a way of passing down knowledge, of teaching him how to navigate the world. As the evening grew darker, they finally finished up and sat down on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze. Uncle Justin handed John a glass of iced tea, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. "Thanks for coming over today, Johnny boy," Uncle Justin said after a while. "It means a lot to me." John smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection to his uncle. "Thanks for teaching me, Uncle Justin. I'm glad I came." Uncle Justin nodded, looking out at the yard where their birdhouse stood proudly. "Remember, John, life is full of lessons. Sometimes they come from books or school, but often they come from the people around you. Never be too quick to dismiss the wisdom of your elders. We've been around a while, and we've seen a thing or two." John thought about that as he walked home later that evening. He realized that there was so much more to learn from his uncle and the other elders in his life. They had lived through different times, faced different challenges, and gained a perspective that he could never have on his own. From that day on, John made an effort to spend more time with Uncle Justin, listening to his stories and learning from his experiences. He began to see the value in the old-fashioned ways, in the lessons passed down through generations. He even started asking his grandparents about their lives, eager to hear the stories and wisdom they had to share. And as he grew older, John carried those lessons with him, using them to guide his own life. He learned that respecting his elders wasn't just about listening to their words. It was about understanding the value of their experiences, learning from their mistakes, and appreciating the love and care they had for him. In the end, John realized that the wisdom of his elders was like a well-built birdhouse. It might not always be flashy or perfect, but it was sturdy, reliable, and built to last, a legacy that he could carry with him throughout his life.
Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. If you want to share your story, write it down in the comments. Peace.